So yeah, I'm going to. All right. All right. Everybody. I'm going to start to live now. So hope everyone already prepared. So yeah, I'm going to. All right.
Hi there, and welcome to Tzu Chi Foundation's panel on Asian American woman leaders, What I Tell My Younger Self. I'm Teresa Lee of Tzu Chi Foundation, coming to you live from the Big Apple, New York City. Thanks for tuning in. May is Asian Heritage Month, and back in March, it was Women's History Month. To celebrate these meaningful times, Tzu Chi Foundation has put together a rare and informative evening with three highly accomplished Asian American leaders to share their experiences of how they succeeded and how they prevailed during their journeys. Let me give you a sneak peek of who our distinguished guests are tonight. Former New York State Assembly member and is currently a U.S. Congresswoman in the United States House of Representatives, Congressmember Grace Moan. The president of CEO and of Health First, one of the largest nonprofit healthcare providers in New York State, Ms. Pat Wong. Former banker, managing millions of dollars in charitable giving for JP Morgan Chase, and is now the first Asian American Democratic District Leader elected in New York City, Ms. Jenny Lowe. As you can see, we have quite the red carpet guest list today. We are really in for a treat. And of course, thank you very much to our speakers for taking the time to share with us and hopefully instill some inspiration into our younger audiences. And another treat for our viewers. As we near the end, we'll answer some of your own questions, so we highly encourage you to ask. Speaking with your leaders is vital for your growth and is one of the best ways to improve your processes and strategies. We're in for an eventful evening, so I'm very excited to get started. First off, a snippet about us, Tzu Chi Foundation. We'll answer some of your own questions, so we highly encourage you to ask. Speaking with your leaders is vital for your growth and is one of the best ways to improve your processes and strategies. We're in for an eventful evening, so I'm very excited to get started. First off,
one of the trailers was sponsored by a Buddhist compassion relief fund known as the Tzu Chi Foundation.
During this time, I have felt supported and been deeply moved by family, by friends, and total strangers. A Taiwan Buddhist compassion relief organization, Tzu Chi Foundation USA, who donated $1,000 to my family on the spot.
You guys were here within 24 hours. You were the first people on the scene, if I recall. You were the first people as we walked through the door, before the supplies even started.
The Buddhist Tzu Chi Foundation has put together $10 million. There is no red tape, there's no nonsense, there's no hassle. They come online and they get their assistance immediately.
Thanksgiving's coming. Yes, the cash card, it's huge. And just knowing that someone's out there that even cares, besides the dollar value of the card.
The line is doing well, everyone's doing well, everyone's happy, everyone's excited that we're gonna be back on our feet. God bless everybody!
They come online and they get their assistance.
It's really beautiful what your organization and you as individuals are doing.
Your organization has brought so much joy and comfort.
You were also giving them a message of hope.
Every nationality working together. Love means more to me than any dollar bill.
God bless everybody!
We were descended on by this conclave of blue angels that we call them. We couldn't believe an organization like this
has brought so
come
much
to Dickinson,
joy and comfort.
Texas.
You were also
They're
giving
from
them a
all
message
over,
of
really.
hope. Every
If you'll give
nationality
a
working
round of
together.
applause,
Love
please.
means more
All
to
these
me
volunteers.
than any dollar bill.
You think I'm only one person, I can't affect anything, but that's not true. And what she did was like putting a pebble into the pond and watching the ripples go. It affects so many more people when you touch so many more lives.
They're from all over, really. A round of applause, please.
Today, in that tent,
You think
we
I'm
will
only
all
one
breathe the
person,
same
I
air.
can't affect
We will all walk
anything,
the
but
same
that's not
ground
true. And what she did
together.
was like putting a pebble into the pond and watching the ripples go. It affects so many more people when you touch so many more lives.
They're from all over, really. A round of applause, please.
Today, in that tent,
You think
we
I'm
will
only
all
one
breathe the
person,
same
I
air.
can't
We
affect
will all walk
anything,
the
but
same
that's not
ground
true. And what she did
together.
was like putting a pebble into the pond and watching the ripples go. It affects so many more people when you touch so many more lives.
They're from all over, really. A round of applause.
Today, in that tent, we will all breathe the same air.
Tzu Chi's humanitarian aid and great love extends globally and is also why tonight's topic is so befitting. Our founder, Master Chanyan, is also a female, an Asian, and she guides over 10 million volunteers worldwide, spanning 5 continents. And our special guests tonight are just as impressive and influential. I know we're all anxious in our seats to hear directly from these incredible leaders about their background, their successes, their journeys into and in the US. So I will tempt you no more. Without further ado, please welcome US Congresswoman who just last week helped pass the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act and is the first and only Asian American Congress member from New York State, Congresswoman Grace Moan.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you to the entire Tzu Chi Foundation and whole team for hosting this event. It's so uplifting to be with my colleagues. Pat Wang, thank you so much for your leadership throughout our city and our state. My good friend Jenny Lowe. I am just a few years younger than Jenny, but have really watched her as she has committed her life to public service, and am so proud of the leadership that she shows for so many of those that have come after her. You all know that women are often considered as our own minority because people don't necessarily see leaders when they think of a woman, and when they see that we don't necessarily look like what they think a traditional leader looks like. Just over 100 years ago, the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution finally ended the decades-long movement for women's voting rights. But sadly, women's rights are still not fully protected under the Constitution, and is just compounded for women of color as well. Growing up, I didn't necessarily think that I would ever enter into politics. I didn't really know politicians who looked like me. I was a very shy person, never raised my class, never ran for student government or even took a political science class. But I realized that what I initially perceived as weaknesses a woman leader were actually strengths. And through all of our work, all of the women on this call and throughout our country and in our community, it is those unconventional types of leaders and the unconventional stories and experiences that we bring to the table when we're advocating for different legislation and policies. And we surely have a lot
Recording in progress.
road to travel, but I am really hopeful and so thankful for so many who have come before me, and look forward to continuing our partnership together as we help pave the way for even more future leaders in the future. And especially excited this year as we celebrate our first female vice president of the United States in Kamala Harris. So better days are ahead.
Absolutely agree. And I really want to personally thank you again for your hard work in passing the recent COVID-19 hate crimes. And actually, not only that, I also want the audience to know that you've also helped pass the American Rescue Plan for funding of colleges, university, and students. And you're also for promoting the teaching of Asian American history in schools. So thank you, Congresswoman Grace Mong, Ms. Mong. It's great to have our voices heard. Thank you. I like to bring forth another inspiring leader who has been one of the most passionate voices for healthcare reform. She leads nearly 5,000 employees to provide one of the largest nonprofit health insurance to nearly 1.7 million New Yorkers and is one of the largest regional insurers serving Medicaid and Medicare consumers in the country. Earlier this year, she was also chosen to co-chair the Vaccine Equity Task Force to help ensure that all New Yorkers have equitable access to and confidence in the COVID-19 vaccine. It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Pat Wong. I'm sorry, Ms. Wong, I think you're muted.
Yes, it will help if I'm off mute. Thank you. Thank you so much, Teresa, for the kind introduction. Thank you to the Tzu Chi Foundation for hosting this program, but really for the incredible work that you do. You're really amazing, and your attitude of selflessness and helping people throughout the years, as your video showed, is truly amazing. And we know firsthand how much you did to help the community in the past year when the pandemic was affecting so many people's health care, but also their jobs, their employment, their ability to maintain their homes, their families, have food on the table. And you were there, and Health First has been very happy to support and partner with you. You're amazing. I also want to give a shout out to my co-panelists, Jenny Lowe and Congresswoman Grace Mung. Congresswoman Mung is an amazing, amazing representative for the city, the state, Asian American women, and we could not sing your praises more. You're really doing a fantastic job. We're very, very proud of you, I just want to say. The topic of the program tonight is, I guess, I think it's titled What I Would Have Told My Younger Self, and so I think we'll get into some of the specifics and thoughts around advancement in people's respective professional careers. But I just want to pick up on something that Congresswoman Mung said, which was that she never imagined that she would be in politics or run for office, and had no precedent to see somebody ahead of her who was blazing that trail, who she could say, oh, I want to be just like that person. So she was the trailblazer herself. And I think that that's true of many of the journeys that many of us have taken and will take. I know, speaking for myself, that my career I did many different things in my career. And if you asked me at the time, it was all with a grand goal to be leading Health First right now, which is a company that I love dearly. I would have said I could never, ever, ever have told you, when I started, even, in more recent time, that this was my aspiration or that this was my destination. But the one thing that I think is true is when we talk to all of the esteemed women on the panel and in the audience, that things make more sense when you're looking backwards with 2020 hindsight. Oh, all of those things fit together. They all contributed to the person that I am today, doing the things that I am today. So I just want to leave folks in the audience with just that kind of thought about the path is not necessarily linear. The path is one of believing in yourself and taking chances and doing things that might feel different or uncomfortable, but most importantly, are interesting and resonate with you. That's a good path to take, and I think that you will find many people have taken that path and are very happy that they did. So thank you, and thank you for having me on the program. Very honored.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wong, and health first, and especially like you said, for helping us during the pandemic and continues to do so even now when the vaccine is out. Your help is so needed and greatly appreciated. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, featuring the first Asian American Democratic District leader elected in New York City. As an immigrant herself and a product of New York City public schools and a graduate of Yale University, Ms. Lowe knows that a strong education is the foundation for a better life. Thus, she has dedicated over 30 years to improving the lives of immigrants, women, people of color, and low-income communities. She is currently the Director of Administration at the Office of New York City Council Speaker Corey Johnson. I really appreciate your advocacy, your leadership, and dedication. Please give a warm welcome to Ms. Jenny Lowe. Over 30 years to improving the lives of immigrants, women, people of color, and low-income. Ms. Lowe, I think you're muted.
Myself? Well, first of all, thank you, Tzu Chi Foundation, for hosting this very, I think it will be very delightful event. And I'm so honored to share the screen with Congresswoman Grace Meng and Pat Wong.
Ms. Lowe, I think
you two are someone that I look up to when I see what we could do more. I think what Pat said earlier is that, how do you figure out what you would do in your future career is not something that you just kind of set a formula and just go for it. I have really been my career paths kind of went different ways, and finally I feel that there is a purpose of all those different types of work that I have done, and I look back and like I say, look back and say, those were all experiences that helped me learn and acquire the skills and the experience that had helped me grow so much. And I as Teresa mentioned, I immigrated here when I was 12, and it was just couldn't imagine what it would be like to live in America. And but my grandmother, who was here first, was a devout Buddhist. In fact, she helped founded the first Buddhist association in New York City in 1969. That's the China's Buddhist Association of Fa Wangzi on Canal Street. So it was really grandma's teaching that no matter how much you have or how much you don't have, there's always a way that you can help and give a helping hand to someone else. And that's how she lived her life. And so I guess it just stuck with us. We came here, my family, my parents, and my three other siblings, we came here because we wanted to get an education. And grandma told us that that's what was our job. And we did. And thanks to other trailblazers in our community who have fought so hard for bilingual education, social services, where a kid like me can take get those opportunities and got an education. And I never forget that. So when I came back to work in New York, I didn't really know what I want, but I knew that I wanted to do something where I have to work with the public. So I went into commercial banking, and slowly gravitate towards work that help bring resources to our community. I really cannot tell you that I had this goal and it was what I always wanted to do, Pat. I think I just it was just felt good. And I think what I, in looking back, I would say that, and when I talk to young people today, you really have to follow your passion and learn as much as you can and just build on it each step of the way. When I first met the Congresswoman, we were we were both on the panel to review scholarship applications. And that's how we knew each other. She had that compassion and passion to help people in the next generation. And I think, you know, when you have that in your heart, no matter what profession you ended up doing, you will always be looking out for people, looking out for those who don't have the voice. And you, when you are able to use your voice to help them, that's what you do. And that's what I've seen the Congresswoman have done for all of us in New York. Have that in your heart, no matter what profession you
Follow your passion. I love that quote. That's going to be our quote of the day. I know it already. So thank you very much, everyone. And it's really great to have you all here. We'll now move on to our main event this evening, speaking with our panelists, where our next generation can learn from such inspirational leaders and can follow in your footsteps. In any of these sharings, we love to hear about any stories from our early days. I know, for example, Ms. Wong said she had some odd jobs before. We love to hear about that. So any stories are welcome. You know, those are always fun to dig up, and we can laugh about it here now, and also use as a learning experience. So feel free to share as much as you like. I promise I won't tell. We love to hear about any stories from. So we'll go around the room. First question is, what advice do you have for Asian females aspiring for leadership positions? We'll break this down into two parts. One for those that are in the early years of the careers, and the other for those that are a little further along and are hoping to transition to a leadership or managerial position. First question. So who would like to start? What advice do you have for Asian females aspiring for leadership
I can start.
positions? Thank you.
I think for those starting out, although I mean, it could go either way, but I think the concept of mentorship is something that I wish I took more seriously or thought more about. I think I've been in many rooms where there may have been people in various fields or professions, and I wish I had been less shy. I wish I had taken on more of an initiative to reach out, maybe, you know, have coffee, ask them questions about their field. And if I were to tell my younger self that, that's what I would do. You know, go get the business cards, write a thank you note, you know, stuff like that. And at the same time, you know, for those in the later stage of your career, it's always good to be a mentor too. I think there are so many people who come after us or behind us that could really benefit. You might not think you possess, you know, expert or, you know, enough knowledge about or experience, but it really is and can be very helpful to someone who might be looking to get into your field. And finally, just in general, something that I have learned is the importance of being authentic and being true to yourself. I think I spent a lot of my earlier part of my career trying to fit in, trying to, you know, look like or you know, appear like what I thought a leader should be. And as most of the leaders ahead of us have been male, it's not something very practical, right? Or viable. And so to sort of embrace, you know, who you are and what you bring to the table and view it and treat it as if they are strengths instead of weaknesses.
I love that. You mentioned the importance of mentorship. And of course, who better than to learn from you three? Miss Lowe, I do have a question for you. What is the best piece of advice you've received?
Instead of weaknesses.
I think the best piece of advice I have received is keeping an open mind and always learn from others. we all somehow grow up or pick up certain ideas, and we keep that to ourselves, right? And one of the things that I feel that would have told my younger self to do was have a sense that you belong here, and not be afraid, and do not put barriers in front of yourself, like you put it yourself. I think, how often as an immigrant and someone who's learned English a little bit older, and I just felt like I didn't belong here. I felt like when I went to Yale, I felt like an imposter. And it was very, and I didn't know that. I mean, I know now, right? And you feel like, oh my God, all these people, they grew up here, they know, they know all the sports things, and they can talk about movies and celebrities. And like, I didn't know any of that. And I think when you open your mind and say, yes, you can learn, and also you belong, that once I can speak for myself, I should speak for myself. Once I realized that I belong here, all many of the barriers that I put up for myself went away, and I was able to contribute even more to the conversation, whether it's at work or socially. And I think that's one thing that we want to learn, teach our younger people, is that do not put barriers in front for yourself, and just walk into a room figuratively or literally, that you belong, and be confident.
Actually, can I jump in here? So Jenny, I just want to assure you, I was raised in the States, and I can't talk about sports either, so don't feel too bad about it. I still suffer from that. But the comments are really quite interesting. I think the two things that I would stress, there are two themes. One is the importance of communication, and the other is the fear of failure. So let me just talk about those two things for a second. And this is coming a little bit from the perspective of, this is a large company that, or largish company that I am with right now. And so we're talking about team culture and how you fit into an organizational culture. It is, whether you're starting in your career or you are more advanced in your career, I cannot overstress the importance of communication. In response to your question, Teresa, to Jenny, probably the most important advice that I got at a certain point in my career was you need to make sure you let people know what you're thinking, because it's very hard to figure out what you're thinking. And some of it is personal, but some of it is also communication style, which is, at least in my case, being brought up in a way to be very polite, and maybe not quite as outspoken as, or it felt uncomfortable sometimes to be very, very direct with folks. But it is really quite important. So in my case, it's make sure people know what you are thinking about. But whatever stage of your career you're at, written and spoken communication are really, really critical. It doesn't matter if you're starting or if you're ending. The ability to communicate in those fashions is critically important. And the third part of communication, of course, is listening. I tell folks often, listen as much as you speak. Listen to the words that people are saying to you, but listen and see if you can hear what's actually bothering them, because something is not necessarily being expressed in words. That leads to, or practices, I guess, the development of your emotional intelligence. And if you are working in any kind of group of people, it is really, really important, whatever kind of job you're doing, and particularly if you want to advance to leadership positions, to have emotional intelligence. Presumably, you've got your skill set, you've worked hard, you produce excellent work. The emotional intelligence part, which is supported by communication, is what's going to get you to the next level. The second theme, I think, is an important one, which is fear of failure. failure, because we all have fear of failure. And there's certain cultural aspects of high expectations where it's maybe difficult to sort of tolerate your own failure. It is really important to accept that failure is part of the journey. The important thing when you fail is, and I have failed, is to sort of, not be too hard on yourself. Most important is to learn from the experience, what you learn from the experience, and then pick yourself back up and do better the next time. That's how you grow as a person. So I think the fear of failure is something that we all experience, and as women, we may have more self-consciousness about it because maybe there's a general expectation that we will fail or fail a little bit, or at least, fail a little bit more than some of our male counterparts. So I would say you have to embrace it and not be afraid of it. It's hard, but it's something to work for.
A sense of belonging here. So, Ms. Lowe, we will actually be elaborating on this later on. So I would love to hear more details from you about this. And Ms. Wang, you mentioned failure, what we are all so afraid of. Turning that around to the opposite word, success, which actually leads to our next question. What is your definition of success? Elaborate on this later. So I will love to hear
I think my definition of success is, well, first of all, that you're doing something that has meaning to you. You can be successful in the title or your income or your stature, but at the end of the day, if it's not something that you feel is meaningful, I think that it's hard to sustain that feeling of success, my personal feeling. So finding meaning in your work is really, really important. And I guess success is your income or having the feeling that you have taken some risks and that you have pushed yourself a little bit, that you know yourself and that you are at a level where you feel proud of yourself. It doesn't really matter what that level is. It's something that I think is based on your own awareness of your own desires. Some people really want to, they want to go to the top, and that's great. And then there are other people who have different aspirations, and that's fine too. I think it's really knowing who you are and not trying to imitate what other people say. This is what success looks like here. I mean, we have to put food on the table, we have to support our families, but once those things are addressed, beyond that, the definition of success is something that you should feel from the inside rather than have an external picture of like, oh, you've made it now. Because if you don't feel it, then it will feel hollow over time. This is my opinion. Success looks like here. I mean, we have to put food on the table.
I love that you mentioned take risks. And I know, Ms. Wong, that you've done a variety of odd jobs and not knowing where you'll end up. I've heard that you've flipped burgers, you've studied law, and then end up being a financial analyst, and then that brings you into Health First. So I love the risks that you took, and now so successful.
Thank you. I would call it this. I walked through open doors. Doors opened, they seemed interesting. They might not have been linear, but I walked through open doors, and I'm very happy that I did. At the time, it was anxiety provoking, but and I think that Jenny and Congresswoman Mung probably have very similar feelings and similar stories. Doors opened.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to hear from them as well. Any takers?
But I walked through open doors, and I'm very happy that I did. At the time, it was anxiety provoking, but and I.
All right, so I will for Ms. Lowe. Actually, I do want to hear about what personality traits or characteristics would you attribute to helping you become a successful and a prominent leader?
So, speaking of being successful, I would say it this way, I don't know why, but I really am not being falsely modest. I really don't know if I'm really successful. And I never thought of, it's so strange. Being a kid who came to this country when grandma said, you guys have to get an education, it's always about did I does grandma approve of what I have achieved? I mean, it was always thinking about that, right? So whatever grandma says, okay, when you hear her when you're not around and she tells her friends like, my kid is my granddaughter or my is here or there, then you know they're probably because she would have never said that in front of us, right? or to me, or to and it's not because she's mean. It's just how she was brought up as a Chinese in a Chinese family. So I always feel like, well, when my parents said that I'm okay, then I think I'm successful. And I live like that. I mean, I'm beyond, waiting for parents' approval, but somehow that's in me. But I think what Pat said is really interesting, and is that when you feel good about what you have done, no matter what that is, and I think that's really, it really triggers something for myself. Well, yeah, it is, and what did it take to become this way? I think I have always been trying, always been learning about something. And when I was younger, in my early career, I always pick up crap work that people don't want to do, and I'm like, I'll take care of it, and I'll just do it. And it's always that person, and I'm not patting myself on the back. It's just I never mind it. And then at the end, when a few years later, I'm like, oh, I know how to do that because I pick up that crap work from somebody. And so, and it was so I realized much later in my career that you learn something, you always learn something. And if you don't mind staying that 10, 15 minutes later to do something for someone else or work with somebody, that helps so much when the time comes and so how do you do this thing? You already know because you just kind of got curious and you work with someone and you learn that. So and that's kind of how I go about my life. And I really can't say that I had this in mind and this is my mantra, and I just did it just because it felt good. You already know because you just kind of got curious.
Do it because it feels good. Yes. And I myself, just like you guys, I grew up here in America, and however, my parents are same, very traditional. So you're always trying to be successful, right? Live in their eyes. Are they proud of me? We'll see. I know my mom is actually watching this right now, so I can definitely relate. And Congresswoman Wong, what is the most important leadership lesson you have learned in your career? Same, very traditional. So you're always trying.
I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about being authentic and being confident in who you are, and similarly to what Pat was saying about the importance of communication. I think that for too long in my life and my career, I always try to be the type of leader that I saw around me, which was mostly men. And it's kind of a stereotype, but women have slightly different leadership styles. And I think for a long part of my life, I thought that those were weaker leadership traits. But actually, now that I'm older than I look, I have realized that I love the way that women lead and how they are oftentimes more collaborative, more thoughtful. And I think we can oftentimes turn what we originally perceived to be weak traits to something that can be more strong and effective. And I'll give you an example, for me and maybe for some of you, I'm not good at speaking out loud. I was traditionally very shy. I'm not good at advocating for myself. But what many of us, whether as women or Asians, are good at is we're good at helping other people. We're good at taking care of other people. And so for me, I think in my life, I've sort of tried to combine that, and actually I learned this from my grandma too, Jenny. She said, when you're in a room full of politicians, mostly male, mostly white, I don't care if you're shy. You were sent into that room to speak up for other people. You are carrying your community's needs and concerns into that room. And that actually has given me more confidence. Like, oh, okay, I have to speak up now because it's not for myself. It's for my community and the people I'm supposed to represent and take care of. So, that sort of thinking, trying to change what we used to perceive as a weakness into something that is actually a strength, I think can be helpful. Okay, I have to speak up now because it's not for
That's great advice. And actually, that will lead to our next topic, which is a heavy topic, but I feel that it needs to be explored. So let's acknowledge both the glass ceiling of being a female leader and the bamboo ceiling of being an Asian leader. Congresswoman Meng, I remember you had shared in another talk a few weeks ago about having experience in Congress or another political arena of being overlooked for a job and award you're actually qualified for due to being one, an Asian, or two, a female. Would you mind sharing here again with us with this new to audience? Do you think it had to do with you being a minority or a woman? And how did you overcome with this? And you've also mentioned, I think, twice here in our talk so far already about being your influences. There's no female influences nearby. It's all men. So can you tell us and talk to us about such an experience?
Do you think it had to do with you?
Sure. Well, I will say, and many people probably can relate, that in many of the rooms that we've been in, there really aren't many other Asian Americans, if any at all. Sometimes at best, it's just us, right? And there were times, for example, I can think of many examples, and this is a great opportunity to talk about the importance of allyship. With other communities as well, with other communities and leaders who may have gone through what we've gone through, what we're going through now in the Asian American community, and who we can work together with more closely. I was trying to get on one of the committees in Congress. There weren't any Asian Americans on this entire committee, and I really thought that an Asian American needed to be there. Of course, I wanted to be on the committee, but there's out of the small group of people who choose the committee assignments, there weren't Asian Americans there. So I knew that I couldn't, wait for, let's say, an Asian colleague to stand up and say, oh, we have to appoint Grace because the Asian community's concerns need to be heard on this committee as well. So actually, there weren't any other Asians, but one of my Black colleagues actually stood up for me and said, she said, I'm not Asian, but I know that it's very important for the Asian American community to be represented here. And she spoke up for me, and long story short, I got it because other people were willing to support, other women especially, support me and to speak out for our community, even though we didn't have representation at the room in the room. And so going back to something that Jenny said about learning from each other, I think that's really important too. Because other people were willing to support.
That's great. And I'm really glad to have that African American friend help you. And here you are. Good job. Now, speaking of the bamboo ceiling, you guys might have heard in the news just last month about Justin Zhu, the former CEO of Iterable, which is a $2 billion company. And sadly, he was ousted and replaced. He claims there were tension and discrimination by his investors because he's Asian. He spoke of the challenges of being an Asian American CEO in Silicon Valley. And especially in the Silicon Valley, we see the quintessential CEO is like Mark Zuckerberg, white and male. He acknowledges specifically the bamboo ceiling and that there's an underrepresentation of leadership positions in the US. Now, I'm going to divert this to Ms. Wang, who is herself the CEO of a large company and operating in the US. You've overcome both the glass and bamboo ceiling. Can you tell us about your experience and how did you break through?
Specifically, the bamboo ceiling and that
there's no question that there is underrepresentation of many groups, of women generally, and of people of color in the top CEO positions of the major companies in America. There's underrepresentation on their boards. And that's just a fact. And so it's not surprising to hear of the struggles and challenges that people have. I can't relate it that much to my own specific experience at Health First. I actually got the job at Health First when the company was in trouble. And so, by the way, other tip, CEO jobs when they come available, if the company is sort of going great, there's usually a very strong internal successor who has been groomed and who has climbed that ladder inside of that company and is ready to take the position. Opportunities for leadership at companies like mine and elsewhere often arise because something's wrong. And that was a kind of situation more than 13 years ago at Health First. And that was one of those risky situations that Jenny was discussing before, taking risks of, what am I doing here? I have a family to support. What am I doing? And I would say that with my team, we were able to create the company that exists now. It was good foundation, but it was much, much smaller. And we had very good fortune with a lot of hard work and a team-based effort to make the company what it is today. The only thing that I regret is that, the human lifespan is not longer, because I feel like, oh, wow, now that I've had this experience and feel the sense of fulfillment and self-confidence that comes with it, I could do something bigger, but that's not in it for me just because of demographics and my age and all of the rest. But I feel in my heart like a younger person in terms of the confidence, I guess, that I have finally achieved in my life, which is, again, it's just one of those things that happens sometimes. But I do think that it is, we have to acknowledge underrepresentation in major leadership roles. Actually, Congresswoman Meng said once, and I really, really always think about this, representation matters, representation matters. And so it's true in elected office. We need to make sure that we elect people who are representative of the population. And in the corporate and the business world, I completely agree with the Congresswoman. It is very important for women to support each other. It is very important for underrepresented groups to support each other and to help each other. And I think that that's how you make progress.
It's great to hear that you've been so fortunate throughout your career. And Ms. Lowe, here's where I love to hear your elaboration and perspective about a sense of belonging here as an Asian American.
Underrepresented groups to support each other.
Sure. And, I think, I don't know how much of it's just me, right? So I don't know, but we are constantly under the have this I wouldn't say pressure, but somewhat maybe it is, that this view of us, like someone is looking and say, where do you really come from? And that question is asked, I'm sure all of us here and many in the audience, right? Whether you're in a taxi cab or you just happen to be standing online waiting for something and someone will just ask you. And maybe that did something to me. And I felt like I didn't belong here, right? And I think that really is something that makes us feel like, as you mentioned earlier, then where do I belong, right? I'm here in this country, I'm here in New York, and Grace mentioned something earlier that, when she looked around and she didn't see anybody looking like her in the role that she was taking in, right? And yes, therefore, representation matters. And we if we haven't seen people that look like us in the roles that we are in or we want to be in, then we don't know where we belong. So, but I think over time, when I finally learned that you just have to tell yourself that you belong and you act as you belong and you do not wait for permission. And that was it. And what the epiphany came to me about 15, 10, 12 years ago, I was on the planning committee. I was working at JP Morgan Chase at the time, worked on the planning committee for a conference. And so when they had a reception that night, and I didn't realize that I was supposed to be in the reception. So the woman who I was with, and who happens to be African American, and said, well, what are you going to do? Kick you out? I, I mean, so you come, right? And I went, sure enough, my name tag was there. I mean, like, so from that point on, I learned that you walk into any place, and that's more about literally. But you just when you feel that way and you know that you belong, then you completely have a different aura, and your confidence level is different. And that's what we have to teach our folks. I'm going to say Asian American women, right? That you belong. It doesn't matter if you have been here forever, or your first generation or second generation, or zero generation in my case, right? So tell yourself that you belong. You're here, and you're here to stay. You're here to make a positive contribution to our society, no matter what role you are in.
Very well said, and absolutely true. We really need to work together to reshape the public's understanding of the unique challenges that Asian Americans have faced and are still facing throughout the nation's history, especially currently. I do hope that after tonight, we can inspire this and garner more Asian CEOs here in the US. And then we can certainly give credit to you three here. And tonight might be a memorable moment in Asian American history. Now, I'm going to bring this up to a lighter note due to time, but I would love to refer back to our event title. Now, looking back right now, what would you tell your younger self? Let's start with Ms. Logan.
Sure, I think I said some that earlier on, but I think the what I would have told my younger self is that you need to have confidence in yourself. And no matter what it is, I mean, I don't mean like overly confident and be boasting and all that, but you need to tell yourself that yes, you can do this. And adding to now, I just said that you belong here, and you are a valuable member of whatever that group that you're in. And no matter where you're in school with classmates, or you're in a workplace where you are sitting around a table planning for some project, or deliberating a policy, which is your perspective matters, and people look for your perspective to help formulate policies. And that's something that I have learned, and I would have told my younger self early on, where I would have sat in the meeting and just not say anything, because what if I said something wrong? And what if it wasn't the right thing to say? And that's how I prevented myself from making a positive contribution. So yeah, that's what I would have told myself.
Thank you, and that's wonderful advice. What about Congresswoman Meng?
So something that the national NAACP president said recently really resonated in me. It's to be a friend before you need a friend. And I'm not giving this advice so that you be a friend just in order to reap benefits. But there are times, I think, in all of our lives where we have realized at some point down the road that someone else was kind to us, that someone gave us a hand and helped us out, not because we expected it, but because in somewhere in the past, maybe we had done something kind for that person. And I just feel like even in this crazy world of mine of politics, that is a philosophy that often rings true. There have been times where I've really needed my friends and colleagues, and unexpectedly, they helped me out because at some point maybe I had done something nice for them. And this is true vice versa. Maybe it's because it's in politics, when someone does something nice, it really stands out, and I really appreciate it. And, I try to find ways to support them down the road. It might not be tomorrow or the next day. It might be years down the road. But, when you focus on how you can be a friend and how you can be of support and help to someone else, it really gives you a wider perspective of what someone else or what another community might be going through. And in turn, I think it really gives you just a larger vision of what needs to be done, and in turn instills confidence, actually. And so I think I would say that.
Thank you. And Ms. Wong, what's your take? I know you mentioned to take opportunities that may arise and to take risks. Any other advice that you would give your younger self?
I was just listening to what Congressman Mung said. I really like that a lot. I think that's great advice, whatever age you're at, and it's great advice for your younger self as well. I think that what I would tell my younger self is calm down. Don't be so anxious about things. Don't worry so much about how other people are reacting to you, or what other people are thinking about you, because they're probably not thinking about you at all. And what I would tell my younger self is trust your gut. It really will guide you well. I can say this, when you're young, you're not sure, you don't have as much experience, but I would tell my younger self, you have good judgment, trust your judgment, even if you don't know exactly how it's going to wind up. And the final thing I think I would tell my younger self is respect and love your genuine self. Your genuine self is something that you can reveal to other people. You should do that because it's really great, and you should never be shy to reveal yourself to others. And the final thing I think I would tell my
That's great advice. I love it. Due to time, we are going to hop into the audience questions. So let me take a look. Our first question is for Ms. Lowe. What's her advice for Asian woman working in finance industry, given she was in the field in the past, and it's kind of a field for men unless you're an aggressive woman? We are going to hop into
Well, actually, there are quite a few successful women bankers. That's what I have seen. I would say, if finance is the area that you are interested in, then go for it. And I think women, no disrespect to the men, but I think women are better bankers than men. Congresswoman Meng said earlier that we have that instinct to take care of people, and that's what in finance is about, right? Well, at least in the finance that I was in, right? But I think most of it, right? You, as a banker, you take care of a company or individuals. They rely on you to help them build that next company, find the funding for that next company, or find the funding to start a business, which is what I have done for 15 years, right? So I think just be yourself and go for what you want to do. There are many roles in as a banker as well, and so find the one area that makes you feel good about doing the work.
I love it, and I agree. Women are better bankers and money management. Yeah. All right. Another question is: looking back to your college and major decision, would you be suggesting a different choice for your younger self? Let's give this one to Ms. Wong. I love it, and I agree.
That's interesting. I would. I majored in history in college, and I liked history, but I think I thought I wasn't planning on going on law school at the time. It wasn't like it was a pre-law kind of curriculum thing, but I just thought it's serious, and that's like a good thing to do. If I were to do it over again, I'd major in art history because that's something that I enjoy. I love going to museums. I love art. I'd love to be more informed and have been able to spend time learning about it. And you know what? You can major in art history and still go to law school. It really doesn't matter, and still have the same career. So I think I would have picked something that was more fun and more intrinsically interesting to me.
I love going to museums. Right. Follow your passion. And Ms. Lowe, I know from before you were in finance again, and then now you are running for the city council. Can you also speak about that and also relate this to this question?
Something that was more fun. And
sure. I fell into finance not knowing, to be honest with you. I wanted it when I left college. I knew I wanted a job where I have normal hours. So people always laughed about the banker's hour when we supposedly left work at 3 o'clock. We didn't, but we left work around 5-6 o'clock. That's good enough for me, where I can have time to do work in the community and have my weekends most of the time. So I fell into it because that I wanted a job that deal with the public. So that was the job that dealt with the public, working in a local branch, opening bank accounts and helping people service their personal financial needs. It was great, but I was really fortunate being in a company where when I got bored, I was able to move from one place to another. Somehow, I fell into a job that was in the community development area, and I went there to talk to the manager, the department head, what they can do for the Asian community. She ended up offering me a job, so I stayed for 14 years, and it was one of the best jobs that I could have had at a bank, which is bringing resources of this big bank to the community in a way of also trying to make money for the bank, right? So we made first-time bank loans to women and minority-owned businesses. Many people start their own business from their home, and then they move to a commercial space. And the first time that they can borrow a loan from a bank is what we did. And it just, again, it made me feel so good about doing that. It was just fun. And so from there on, I somehow end up being in jobs that were just bringing the bank's resources to the community. And I spent 10 years making charitable contributions to nonprofit organizations. And when I left the bank, I was kind of figuring out what I want to do. And I fell into a job because somebody asked me not to take an offer until he became Speaker of the City Council. And he convinced me to work for the government. And I didn't know there's such a job like that was so much. I ended up being the community engagement, the director of community engagement for the City Council. First Asian women on the history of City Council being a director in that council. It's crazy. I wish I was the 10,000th person, not the first, right? So people have asked me to run for office for many years, but my husband and I were only able to have one child, so I didn't. I just said, no, I got to take care of this kid. And then when the pandemic hit, it really hit me hard. We were devastated, right? And I'll just speak about the neighborhood where I live in, which is Lower Manhattan. And I felt that it's time that I get off the sideline and run for office, because the council member seat is open, meaning that the current council member cannot run again. And it felt like all my life I might have, done things that are working, volunteering on a volunteer basis, helping the community, because I can't stand not helping. I don't know why. So I feel like this is a time for me to run for office, and I have experience to be in the council. Not only I have worked in the community for over 3 decades, but having been at the council for 3 years, I know I can do the job. And this is where all these years of working, the confidence is building in me, and I am. That's one of the reasons why I'm running for office. Is really just to help the community.
Best of luck to you, and thank you so much. And one last question for our Congresswoman Mong. In celebration of Asian Heritage Month, what is your favorite Asian cuisine?
Ooh.
I'd love to hear from the rest too, but we will speak it quickly.
牛肉面.
Thank you so much. Beef noodle soup, yes, one of my favorites as well. Congresswoman Meng, what about you, Miss Lowe? Of Asian Heritage Month, what is your favorite?
I would say 水饺, 饺子.
Dumplings, nice, nice. And Miss Wong?
Well, I like both of those choices actually, but you know, my mother was from Shanghai, so I grew up eating that style of cooking and cuisine, so I really enjoy that a lot. All of it.
All of it. All of it. Awesome. All right, great. And thank you so much. Such great takeaways. And thank you to all our influential leaders for joining us and sharing your wisdom. Unfortunately, we have to end tonight. So I'll let you go very shortly. We are so fortunate that you three are representing us and for the whole Asian American and minorities communities to look up to. It's such a rare opportunity to meet and speak with someone we admire. And of course, not to mention, we are honored to have three together tonight. So we sincerely thank you again for taking the time. And to our wonderful audience, thank you. And to our wonderful audience who are with us today, I hope today's discussion could lead to a breakthrough in your studies, your company, or your field. Today has given you opportunities to enrich, inspire, challenge, illuminate, and learn. So take this wisdom with you and go make a difference. I do have actually a quote that I really like from Congresswoman Meng from actually one of your previous speeches, and it actually really stuck with me. It is a short but such a great quote. It said, Asian Americans are just as American as you are. So let that sink in. And then before we close, I'd like to thank the organizers who made tonight's event possible. Katie Chow, Peggy Shan, Freeman Su, Kenneth Lau, Suing Yang, our media team, Fan Ting, Nancy Wei, Ping Hao Cho, Enid Goose, and of course, my right-handed woman who's worked tirelessly behind the scenes, Terry Lowe and Sophia Jin. Thank you all so much for your efforts. If you'd like to know more about us and Tzu Chi Foundation, we welcome you to visit our New York City location, Tzu Chi Center on the Upper East Side. We look forward to seeing you there. And in summary, I'd like to leave you with a Jingsi aphorism, which is a quote from our Master Chen Yan. The greatest achievement is to stand up from failure. And in the face of adversity, be grateful, for such opportunities do not come easily. I hope you enjoyed tonight, and until next time, I'm Teresa Lee of Tzu Chi Foundation. Goodbye, and thank you again. Quote from our Master Chen Yan.